Welcome back to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Blake Lovell, back here with thoughts on what has been a very recurring trend for WWE over the past while now, as we know, and another round of releases here on Thursday. And just up front, I am recording this on Thursday evening, and I'm sure there will be a lot more to come out regarding the details and everything on this particular situation with WWE and making all of these releases. A lot of talent released yet again. And as we kind of come to expect, when you have these releases, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of reports, a lot of different, I think, opinions and rumors out there. I know one of the ones I think it was from the New York Post, had a story saying that a source had mentioned that one of the released wrestlers was released due to not being vaccinated. And I know that has sort of made its rounds on social media, but I'm just going to say, like, that's something that's just impossible to comment on because we don't have that information. It's not public knowledge unless those people choose to make that public knowledge. And so for this particular discussion, I think it's, part of a bigger story with WWE on a day where WWE did announce its third quarter earnings for this year and announced revenue totaling $255.8 million. $255.8 million. That is an increase, not a decrease for WWE. Yet, if you look at certain reports, Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp reported that John Laurinaitis sent out a company email, which I think has also become sort of a theme for WWE these days, and said that the reasoning for the releases, back to those two words, budget cuts. Again, $255.8 million increase in revenue for the third quarter for WWE. So take that for what it's worth, I guess, at that point. And, looking at some of these releases, obviously, again, a pretty big list of people here. The most notable ones, I think, that completely, I don't know if they're that shocking anymore when we talk about releases, since, people like Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, and such, that just sort of seem like WWE guys have been released. But when you see this list, I mean, it's just another round, I think, that you look at and say, wow, how did these people kind of be in these positions to be released? Given what, for a lot of these, you looked at it and thought, wow, the potential they could have. And really, we're mostly talking about several NXT talents here. We will have, we got the full list over at 411mania.com. You can check out all the people that were released for the, looking at this podcast. We will probably focus mostly on the people that are obviously getting a lot of the attention. And you can probably start, I think you just go to the main roster first. And I mean, you look at Keith Lee, someone that I thought when they brought him up, he just seemed like someone that was going to be a no-brainer for the main roster. It just seemed like, my goodness, if you can't find a way to use Keith Lee, what are you doing, right? And yet, it didn't work for them. And I just called up. He had the health issues, and that is something obviously he has talked a lot about, since deciding to discuss it. And, it was a very serious deal when you hear him talking about it. And, that obviously played into kind of him being sidelined there for a while, but just someone that never really caught on the way that I think a lot of us expected him to on the main roster. Then he goes through this transition into this Bearcat character. And from there, I am still looking at that one. And I think of all the ones that you look at, there may be one more that's maybe a little bit more surprising given the trajectory for him. But there's no doubt that Keith Lee's towards the top of that list. If you keep going, certainly Karrion Kross and Scarlett, we can throw her in there because I think them as a package, you looked at NXT and you really just saw, you saw the trajectory for these two in NXT and there was just what a dominant run at one point, and then the shining moment to where all the spotlight gets put on Karrion Kross when he makes his Raw debut and he loses to Jeff Hardy in a couple minutes. I think from there was a lot of people, and maybe I may have said it at some point. I've tried to, be optimistic, but there was a lot that said, all right, well, let's just wait and see where it goes from here. And, the thinking is, well, there has to be a story to this, right? Well, looks like there wasn't because this really went nowhere with Karrion Kross on the main roster. Scarlett never even got on the main roster. That duo that seemed like they were, essentially a duo that you just could not mess up. Got quickly messed up, and Cross went into this new character that seemingly, you go from the gladiator mask and the demolition esque stuff to just something completely different. It's just I'm not sure where it went wrong for him on the main roster, but it was clear that his whole main roster run was bungled from the start. Even after avenging that loss to Jeff Hardy, it did absolutely nothing for him, and it was just really hard to take this guy seriously based on how he's pushing NXT versus how he pushed the main roster. And what do you know? That is another theme that we've seen in WWE over the years is people just get pushed in such a different direction. And now with the whole NXT 2.0, it was, just a matter of time, I think, before you saw this play out, especially with the direction they're going with NXT 2.0. It's clear there is a much different direction. And again, we can go back to this whole budget cut stuff, but for a company that is just raking in money, just went to Saudi Arabia and did Crown Jewel, it's going to earn them a ton of money. It's just I'm not sure what else you can say to that when it comes to the reasoning here, but there is a clear reasoning why they are making some of these cuts. And we go back to one of the rounds they made. What was that, earlier this year? Maybe we're talking about all the speculation of a WWE sale and everything like that. I think that speculation is only going to kind of ramp up from here when you look at these kind of moves. Maybe there's something to it, maybe there's not, but it's still something that just it makes you scratch your head when you look at some of these talents. And those three in particular, I think Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Scarlett, certainly at the top of, I think, when you talk about who's going to get talked about the most here, those three, just based on where they were in NXT, what it seemed like the potential for them would be on the main roster, and then to have this, turn out this way for them, very, very interesting development, to say the least. Elsewhere, if you go to the main roster, you look around, Eva Marie, who it seems like hadn't been that long ago that she came back, but she comes back and she's also released in this group. You've got Nia Jax, someone who has really been a regular, in the women's division for a while now. And I know, certainly plenty of criticism surrounding her in the ring and such, and some of the, unfortunate incidents that have happened over the years there. And I know that's, didn't necessarily get her on the good side of wrestling fans at times, but she's also among this group where, again, she was regularly featured when she was, not sidelined with injuries and such. She was someone that was regularly featured in this division, but now released. Another one here that I'll tell you really sort of caught me off guard because I was thinking, we talk about the NXT call ups, and Hit Row was such a huge, success. I think when you look at what they were able to accomplish in NXT before that switch to NXT 2.0, and now BFAB is released. It's just it's pretty interesting to think about because I was probably one of the ones too that said, hey, when they decided to call up Hit Row, I think a lot of people were hesitant because you didn't want them to mess up an act that was really getting over pretty well in NXT. They were very entertaining. Yes, there was lack of experience, and I think that's kind of the case for BFAB is in terms of the in-ring ability. Sure, there's a lack of experience there, and that was evident, in one of the NXT 2.0 matches she has. And I think that that's one of those where you say, okay, well, they'll find a way to make it work. She'll get more experience. She'll get better. Well, maybe not in WWE because she's released, and there goes your traditional Hit Row faction as it stood going into the main roster. So there's another element that's taken out of that. You keep going further. Davey Boy Smith Jr., he was brought back, and we're thinking, okay, well, now he's going to get another shot in WWE. Nope. Didn't even have him, didn't even see him on television, was not factored into anything. Seemed like, just as quickly as he was added to the roster, now he's released again. Mia Yim, obviously with Keith Lee, I don't think that's a big surprise. When you have a pairing like that. It's one too. Where like, what has she done since being in Retribution? Like, and there you go again. Like we talk about call ups, right? And she gets called up from NXT, and she gets put in this just awful Retribution angle, and never able to recover. And it's just I don't know why at times WWE feels the need to just completely change everything about someone when they come up from NXT. But we think about all the people we've listed here. I mean, let's talk about more of these people. Ember Moon, Frankie Monet, they're also among this group. Now, Ember Moon, of course, was on the main roster, goes back to NXT and had a pretty entertaining run there for a while. But now she gets released. So I think again, you look at her and you're someone that's like, well, they brought her up, thought she had some success, but she ultimately goes back to NXT, and there's just not, you don't really look at it and feel like there's a lot of optimism for her to get back on the main roster and have that same success. Frankie Monet, I mean, gosh, she didn't. I mean, she hasn't been with a company that long at this point, and she does have a significant other there, and John Morrison, who's on the main roster, and just as quickly again. I mean, she was a big factor. She's coming in and the tail end of the original NXT, I guess NXT 1.0, whatever you want to call it, before they made the transition. I mean, she was being pushed as sort of that next big star. And just as quickly as things change, they do the whole revamp with NXT. And now, she's not even someone that's considered, even with all of her experience, she's not someone that's considered to bring up to the main roster and push her in any way, shape, or form. She's just released. So I mean, it's another one that really just makes you scratch your head and realize that there was such a. I mean, it's clear when you go down this list of people we're talking about here. Think about the disconnect that when we're talking about sort of the high points of a lot of these people, and not everyone, but the ones we've kind of mentioned. I mean, these are people that had a lot of success in NXT, and it's like, how was that not able to transition to the main roster? And for some people, they got that opportunity. Again, what in my opinion, creative bungled a little bit of it, and it just didn't never work out, and it was going to be hard for them to recover from it, or they just didn't get the opportunity. Period. Those are ones that I mean, really, you keep looking at this and you're thinking, I keep looking at this 255.8 million, and I'm thinking, all right, this obviously isn't budget cuts, because I can't imagine that some of these people were making the kind of money that's really gonna, just take you down a notch when it comes to the money that you're bringing in as a company. WWE has no issues making money. We can talk about the creative all we want, and there's obviously been issues with that over the years, but they have zero issues finding a way to make money. So the budget cuts thing, it's what we expect, but yeah, I think it's obviously just a bunch of crock. When you look at it that way, I mean, some of the other names, Oni Lorcan, another NXT regular, there, Grand Metalik, he had kind of Lucha House Party, really, Lince Dorado also among the group that got released. It's just, yeah, I mean, you just keep looking up and down this list, and you're just thinking, again, this is not anything that's probably all that surprising anymore, and that's unfortunate, because it's not a surprise anymore when you have people that get released like this. I mean, they're really, as we've talked about before, outside of Roman Reigns and people like that, like you're not shocked by any of these anymore, and I think that's again unfortunate, because that is sort of the mindset that you've gotten now after all these releases. And yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I think we probably will undoubtedly know a lot more about kind of what led to these releases, and it always is like you always get these reports coming out, and for some of these people, it depends on what kind of their non-compete clauses are and such. I mean, we could hear from some of these people right away. It may take 30 days or whatever it is. I know Scarlett is one that's already put out on Twitter that she is officially free to work in 30 days. So there's going to be more to this. Like we know how this works at this point in terms of people going on podcasts, tweeting, all this other stuff. There's going to be a lot of information coming out about maybe what led to some of these releases, and I think will be interesting to just look at, not just these as they stand now, but just this trend that is continuing for WWE. And Nick Khan is certainly in a position now to where we talk about the business aspect of all this, and I mean things have changed a lot since Nick Khan took over. And again, this last year felt like 5 years, as we've all said at this point. But I mean, it's just WWE has changed a lot over the past, whatever, year and a half, 2 years, I guess you could say now. We're in, November, early November now, but it is pretty interesting to look at it, and fascinating to think about how much this company has really changed its approach to how it does business, and really, going from stacking talent, as much talent as they could when AEW is getting ready to launch. After AEW launches, you just see a company that goes out and just, grabs a lot of talent. And now, that opinion is sort of completely changed from a business standpoint, to where they are going in the opposite direction. They are getting rid of so much talent. And, at some point, and we will have this discussion, I'm sure, is, for some point at AEW, there comes the time where, how many people can you sign? Well, if you look at this group here, I mean, there's, people have different opinions, and it depends on, what you think of these people's working styles and everything. But I mean, to me, Keith Lee's a no-brainer. I think if you're anyone looking at this and just all the potential and talent that he has, I mean, Karrion Kross and Scarlett as a duo are, like I said earlier, I mean, they are a proven act as a duo, and what they can do together. Apart, as we saw, did not really work out too well for Karrion Kross. I don't know if that was entirely, his fault in terms of how he was booked. But there's just the good news, I guess, if you want to kind of look at it this way, is, there is a scenario now where, with things seemingly somewhat, I don't know if we would call it normal, but the new normal, whatever that looks like, there is a lot of opportunity out there for wrestlers. Now, obviously, with Ring of Honor going on hiatus and all of that, and not necessarily knowing what their future is going to look like, at least, for the next 4 or 5 months or so, that is one place to where, you could have had opportunities for people and such, especially, when you look at the women's division and what they've kind of done. But, there are still a lot of places to work out there, whether it's AEW, whether it's Impact, GCW. We've all looked at Game Changer. They're doing a lot of creative things. There is potential out there, and these people will have opportunities, I think. But it is still, just, I think it's mind-boggling when you look at WWE, and that they are still far and away, they're still the biggest company in the world, and they're still certainly far and away the most profitable company in wrestling. But yet, you're getting these budget cuts and all of this, and it's just, it makes you think about kind of what the future of this company is going to look like. And really, we've seen the dynamic really change in NXT with NXT 2.0. But it's clear they are going in a much different path than, was the previous iteration of NXT. And I think, again, when we look at some of these releases, there is a common thread there with people who were in NXT, and aren't necessarily a part of this new vision, with that, with the Braun Breakers and the Von Wagners and all of these people that they are pushing, from that particular, era now. I mean, that is sort of the new era in WWE. And it's just very interesting to look at this and sort of see where things are headed. Could a sale be in the future? I'm sure that will be speculated a lot about. But there's just, you look at all these different moves, and it's just going to be interesting to see where these people go from here. Like we said, it's certainly from a timing standpoint. These people are probably in a better position than the ones that were released, last year at this time, or I can't even keep up at this point with all the rounds of releases that have happened. Probably since April of last year or whatever it was. But it's just, yeah, that these people will have opportunities, but still, I think that is a storyline. But the storyline is also, what is WWE doing, and what is the approach here, as we've seen. I mean, I think it's just, this is the approach they've decided to take. No matter flaunting all the millions of dollars they're bringing in revenue, this is the approach they've taken from a talent standpoint, and we'll see if it pays off for them, because it's certainly paying off in terms of the money they're bringing in. But when it comes to, I think, giving wrestlers the opportunity to succeed, sometimes not always the case when it comes to just, their handling of certain talent has been a little, just leaves a lot to be desired, I think, for this. But we won't discuss too much more of this for now, because I think, again, there are going to be more details that come out on perhaps what led to some of these releases, like I said earlier, there's certainly plenty of speculation on Twitter. That's nothing new for anything, but I kind of like to stick to to what you kind of see and what is kind of the hard reporting on some of this stuff to really get the insight now. But I'm sure there will be a lot more insight into what led to this, what the moves that were made. But I just, again, you go back to sort of the timing and everything with the company announcing this revenue and a big third quarter and all of this. And it's just, yeah, it's something that will continue to be discussed. And for all the, things that are happening in the world of wrestling, WWE, as I said, still the giant, but the giant is certainly doing some things that makes you wonder at this point. So, again, you'll be able to find all of the news stories for everything going on with these releases over at 41mania.com. We'll put the links to some of those in the show notes so you can check everything out there. And some, upcoming podcasts, we'll talk more about the fallout from this, I'm sure, and the details and everything that will continue to come out on these releases. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where things go from here. But check out everything we've got going on at 41mania.com, our news, reviews, columns. It's all over there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for 41 on Wrestling. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We'll put the link to that in the show notes. And as always, we'll have the link to the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family in the show notes. So be sure to continue to share and contribute to that if you can. And everything else, 41mania.com. But thanks as always for listening to the podcast. And we'll talk to you next time here on the 411 on Wrestling Podcast.